Hey guys, just recently DeepCool launched their AG400 cooler and they are already following up with the budget lineup to fill this market segment. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new lower end AG400 and AG620 and compare them to the AK series to see if they've made loads of compromises or if it's actually now an even better deal. Let's get right in. So we'll start with the lowest end unit, and we've got the AK version, which is actually, this one is in white. So that's the more premium of the premium series, and it retails between $30 and $35. So the $35 version is the white, and this is the new AG series. So this actually has a retail price of $25. So there's clearly a difference here already, but let's get inside and just go through what you get for your money and what are the main differences. Let's just start with the older unit and just kind of quickly go through it. So in the box we have a bag with all the accessories, quick start guide, and we have the cooler itself. We've pre-applied the thermal paste, I like that. We just have cover that up so we don't smudge it and do the usual. So, and then let me just put this to the side for a sec. Anyway, have a look inside. You have more padding in there. It's quite nice, but that's it. That's all you get inside. Right, the unit itself is all in white, and I like the fact they've actually gone through the effort and colored everything in white. Actually looks really nice. Right, keep this to the side. Let's do the AG now. So similar principle. We have a bag with all the accessories and the cooler. So the packaging is still pretty good. Still got a good amount of foam around. I immediately see a difference where there is no thermal paste pre-applied. You actually need to peel this off and apply the thermal paste. So I can see it's inside the bag. Generally speaking, I think the rest looks kind of similar. So on the more premium version, you can see that it has a cover, a little plastic cover that kind of hides this and makes it a bit more neat. It makes it flush with the actual fan. Here, the fan sticks out. I believe it's the same fan, same model fan. Let me just double check in a bit. But generally, it looks kind of similar. It still has that little pattern at the back. The size of the cooler is exactly the same. The keen eye of you may have noticed that this is actually a RGB fan, or at least it features RGB. So I'm seeing one cable here for the fan header, and I am not seeing a separate cable for controlling the RGB, meaning that this is RGB in terms of it'll be colorful, but that's clearly not as premium, considering you can't control the RGB. Let's go into the accessories and have a look at what we got inside. So we have the main bracket, thermal paste in a lovely little bag, accessories. I believe these are for Intel and these are for AMD. You need to double check the guide. And then we have two back plates. I believe one of these is for the new Intel 1700 socket, and the other one is for the old 1151. Now, let's see the accessories in the old unit. So we still have the same metal plates, screws, two extra retention brackets for the fans. So if you were to buy or attach an additional fan to this, you actually have the little retention brackets. So, or if you were to break these, you have replacements. So that's a nice little touch. And then you have an adjustable back plate. So the mounting mechanisms have definitely evolved over the years. This only been released earlier this year. So they're similar but slightly different. Following up on these devices, what other differences we have is the cheaper version only has 1 year warranty, while you get 3 years with the older AK version. One other thing that comes up in here is the fans. The fans are actually different. So the fan in the new model actually has higher fan speed, which has, according to the spec, has a higher airflow. So we'll test the actual results a bit later on. What we'll do next is we'll actually put these to the side and we'll compare the same on the dual tower cooler and see what the differences are in there. I have a feeling that you'll also have a few less retention brackets and just everything, but with a little bit less off. But let's just open up and have a look. So with the dual coolers, we yet again have a white version, the AG620, and the cheaper is the AG620. So again, let's have a look at what's inside and work from there. All right, so we've got a little box with all the accessories. So we'll go through these a bit later on. And let's see if we've got the cooler. So, yet again, nice bit of padding. The cooler itself, yet again, has the same grooves. And it comes with dual fan design. And oddly enough, actually this one doesn't have pre-applied thermal paste, nor does it use direct transfer from the pipes to the plate. It actually has a separate plate. So that's interesting. I believe the other two have direct access from the heat pipes. You can see here. So the actual copper pipes go through and has direct contact to the CPU. And same on the budget one. So that's interesting. And accessories wise, some thermal paste. Get some tools, that's cool. A dual fan to single fan output splitter, it's kind of nice. And all the accessories. So we'll leave. And lastly, the budget version. Again, box with accessories. Similar design. Also a heat spreader on the bottom rather than direct contact from the pipes. We've got the two fans. The rest of it kind of looks very similar. Again, just like on the other units, this one has, actually this stands okay. So, little plastic covers hiding everything. What you also may see is there is a height difference. This is a little bit taller. So we've got the fan splitter again, manual without pouch, and a bunch of accessories. So let's just open up and go through the accessories. I think you get less in here as well. So the thermal paste, I'm pretty sure it's a lot less thermal paste. Also, once you've opened this, you can't really reseal it. That's the difference on the other one, is you can actually still reseal. Well, it's still sealed, essentially. With both of these fully unpacked, the accessories are actually very comparable. In fact, all the mounting accessories are exactly the same. The only difference you have is really the addition of a screwdriver, and the thermal paste is, well, I'd say probably better in terms of you'll be able to reuse it a few extra times. Once you've opened this, you basically have to use it and throw away the rest. Other than that, the rest is just more cosmetic from what I'm seeing right now. Just like it is with the cheaper coolers, what you find is these fans are actually different. Looking a bit deeper into the DeepCool fans, we find that the existing fans were based on a fluid dynamic bearing, while the new fans are actually based on hydro bearing. So this fan is, while it looks like the performance is actually very similar between these fans have a little bit more airflow. So we'll go through and actually do some testing now. For this, we'll be using my AMD test bench. We're going to be using an AMD Ryzen 3800 XT, which is a 105 watt TDP, well, which is a 105 watt chip. So we'll throw it on the bench and just test all of these coolers and see which one performs better. And it's actually worth spending extra money for anything other than cosmetics. Before we get into the testing, let me show you how these coolers need to be mounted. We'll start with the smallest, and we actually already have a graphics card and pretty tall RAM in there as a sanity check to make sure that there's no interference. So this will be a good benchmark for the compatibility overall. So we'll start with the cheapest unit, which is this one here. And actually both of the cheapest coolers have exactly the same mounting method. So we'll just take the screws, this is for the AMD side, and we need to install this plate on top. For that, first thing we need to do, we need to remove the stock bracket for the AMD socket. So we'll do that first, And then we need to install this bracket that goes over the top, and it's going to sit right here. Thing to consider is when you remove these screws, the back plate will actually just drop. So you might want to leave your hand below to catch it so you can quickly and easily attach the new bracket on top. Otherwise you'll have to fish it out. What's worse is if you're doing this in an existing system and you don't have access to the back, so you kind of need to pre-plan and make sure you remove the motherboard, set this up and then put it back in. So it's not necessarily a convenient way of doing it, but it's just something to bear in mind. So now we need to take these and just put on each of the corners just to lift the bracket. This goes right here. As you can see, you have these little indents for where the screws are going. What we can do is throw in two or three screws loosely, and then you can stop holding on to the bracket at the back, because at least it's being held in by the screws. Don't over tighten it, because one thing you notice, there's actually a bit of movement in this bracket. So you want to make sure you align it properly, so to get the perfect pressure in the middle of the chip later. Now that the bracket is installed, what you would do is you put in some thermal paste, remove the bottom protective film or sticker. I'd recommend taking this cable and just untying it so it's ready for you to go. And you would just screw this in like this. And you have access on both sides for the screws. By the way, on the older AK400, to access both mounting screws, you need to remove the fan. It is nice that DeepCool improved it on the new one though. We're just showing the example of how you install it normally. So I'm going to take this all apart and set up the other cooler shortly, but let's just quickly go through the process. So make sure you align it and just screw it on, making sure that you don't over tighten one side or the other. Just go back and forth. This will ensure you have maximally just spread the load. That's it, that's on there. And lastly, you take the cable, the fan cable, that you should have, if you followed my advice and do as I say, not as I do. Take this off. This is obviously much easier to do as I'm doing now on the test bench. If you're inside a case, this will be a lot harder. And just plug it in into the CPU header. There you go. Since I didn't put any thermal paste on, I'm going to take this off. I'm going to swap for the larger cooler and show how that installs. For the larger dual tower cooler, we're going to be using, again, AM4 attachments, and it's this little bag here. What we'll need to do first is take them out. It's actually a kind of nice process where you have these screws with already little extensions attached to them, and you just screw them into the back plate that AM4 boards come with. And what that does is just going to secure that in there. Beauty is, there's no little extensions to move around with, and my hand is free much faster. I like this. And now it comes with a little bracket here. Just install that in there. There's only one way to do it, so what you want to make sure is that the section where the mount attaches later is towards the CPU. There you go. So that's in place. Next, what we need to do is you would normally add, well actually we'll add some thermal paste now. For the thermal paste, we'll actually use the thermal paste that each device comes with to make it more true to life experience rather than comparing like for like using a third-party thermal paste. So we'll take this open. I'm not a fan of these little packets, I'll give you that, because I'm expecting it to go everywhere already. I think it kind of is. Right, so let's see. I think that's actually plenty of thermal paste on there. And what happens is your hands get all dirty because of, part of it is me, part of it is this packet, and let's just say, not the biggest fan. I would have preferred the tube for this, so I understand that they need to save money somewhere. There's just a usability thing though. The cooler itself comes with the screws underneath the fan, so what we need to do is actually remove these fans, which is just little clips off
and they should pretty easily come off. So do this, just slide it out. I do apologize for the noise, it's not the most pleasant noise. I'm sure I could have done it in a more neat way, but anyway, it was effective. Now you have access to the little screws that will go on top. Considering this is a test bench, the orientation doesn't really matter, but normally in a system we would want to have exhaust either out through the top or out through the back. So you need to make sure you decide which way we want to go. So in this way, we're going to go exhaust this way. So it's going to come out at the back. Put it in. Oh, that is actually interfering with the RAM. Also, don't do this. One thing I've missed of doing is we need to actually secure the bracket in place. So, I'm not perfect. So put the bracket in place and just tighten these up just in case. Remove. Let's go ahead and mount this for the second time, and now with the protective film removed. Since we've already seen that we do have interference with the RAM, there's a pretty easy solution. What you can do is take this fan and just readjust it a bit up so it's no longer interfering. You will lose a bit of performance, but it's just something that you have to live with. Or, in my example, I'm just going to flip it over, and since the middle fan is the other fan here, it would be actually okay. And to be honest, what you can do is you can actually flip the fan across anyway using these little clips, so it doesn't really matter. So we can just put it right in there and screw it in. With the cooler in place, you can now put in the fan. Just need to decide where you want to keep the cables. I'll keep them out this way, it just makes it easier for me to control them. Make sure it's mounted on both sides. This one has a miniature amount of space in between. And since we have two cables, we can now use the little splitter, join them up together so it just gets controlled by one port on your motherboard. If you wanted to, you can actually just use two ports with the CPU and the auxiliary CPU cooler header, but I prefer using just one port. That just makes it easier for expansion in the future as well. We'll boot with default settings and see how it goes. So we've booted up with the dual tower cooler, and I'm seeing CPU currently hovering at around 45, 46 degrees. That's obviously it just being passive. And it's about 26 or 27 degrees Celsius in this room. So it's pretty warm. Let's give it some heat and see how this performs. At the moment, it's barely audible. It's just really almost doing nothing, so let's kick it a bit. So we'll do advanced benchmark, and let's give it a 10-minute run on multi-core. And we can see it's already shot up to 73 degrees, and I can hear the fan ramping up. It's at 75 degrees right now. Fan's definitely ramping. Yeah, you can definitely hear it, but it's not exactly loud. Let's just get our audio tester just for a quick check. We'll do proper testing a bit later on. Less than 40 dB at like a 20 centimeter distance. That's pretty good. Temperature is still going. So what we'll do is we'll keep this test bench as is, and we're gonna go through and set it up same way. I'm gonna run a bunch of tests and I'm gonna compare all of the different coolers and show you results a bit later on.
After running a whole stack of tests, we have the results. Just for reference, we're using Ryzen 7 3800 XT with custom overclock, which pulls around 120 watts during the whole duration of the test. In noise normalized tests at 35 dBA, we see an older AG620 cooler delivering slightly better performance over the AG620. And on the lower end, we see that the new budget cooler runs exactly 2 degrees cooler than the AG400. While the difference is not huge, it is still nice to see some improvement. Talking about improvement, if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing for more videos like this. For the second test, we set the fan speeds to the maximum and let them rip. This shows the maximum possible performance at the cost of acoustics. Here we have AG400 still in the same spot, since the fan it comes with is actually really quiet, but that is why it performs worse than its cheaper alternative. With the AG400, we're able to extract another 1 degree of cooling. In the higher end units, if we look purely at the temperatures, we are essentially identical, but when we look at the noise levels, the new cooler is a little louder. To be fair to all of these units, I feel anything under 40 decibels is actually pretty reasonable, as it is unlikely that most users will run their CPU at full tilt for a very long time. Which brings me to the conclusion. Given the choice, should you buy the newer, cheaper coolers from DeepCool or save the money and go straight for the older AK variant? The answer is actually pretty easy. If you want to save a few dollars and don't care for the looks or convenience, cheaper units perform really well. On the other hand, if you want your build to look a little bit better, or in the dual tower example, expect to change your CPU in the future and reuse the cooler, then you might be better off getting the AK series, as you'll have slightly better performance and extra thermal paste for that upgrade. In general, all 4 of these units deliver similar results. If you want to check out any of the items covered in the video, the links are in the description below. I hope you found this useful. Don't forget to smash that thumbs up and subscribe for more. We'll see you guys in the next one.